Welcome everyone to another episode, and I'm super delighted to be with you all again. It's Annalena here, your host, and today I have a guest that has been on the podcast before. Her name is Erin West. I had the pleasure also to meet her a couple of times in person, which has been wonderful. And she is a former lawyer, and eventually she got out of corporate because I think the burnout was something somehow getting to her. She went to travel the world. And somehow trading found her. So now she's teaching people all over the world how to trade, but actually in a very spiritual way. I have taken her course myself. And it's actually so soothing for the nervous system. It's so much more than just trading, I can tell you that. It's a whole transformational journey. And she's also really becoming a thought leader when it comes to how we approach money, especially as women. And I'm just so happy you're here with me again, Erin. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here again chatting with you. Last time it was so powerful. And yeah, so thank you.
Yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to add on to your introduction?
No, I think that's wonderful.
So perfect. So we're gonna talk about money today, obviously. We
Yeah.
also the other day when we met in person, we talked all about money and things like that. And I would love just to hear your perspective, especially when it comes to so what I'm gonna share with you first, what I see, right? And then I really want to hear all your wisdom, is that there's a big shift going on in the world, obviously, right? We're mainly there was this hustle and grind mentality, right? And only like more money is better, like chasing profits and things like that. And then there's also, women kind of back in the day were more like, well, we're going to be at home behind the stove, and the men are more in charge of making money, right? And now we also, I mean, especially in the coaching space, there's a big hype with money, like the whole boss babe movement and how to make 6 and 7 figures. And a lot of us have also gotten a really bad taste of that as well. Then many incredible entrepreneurs, right? They're doing the most amazing things, but they're so struggling with money. There's all these like limiting beliefs around money or stories that are really not helping us. And so it's almost like there's a big confusion going on, right?
Mhm.
And reality is, I mean, we need money, right? We still have money as a form of living, and we need to pay our bills and stuff like that. So just wanted to kind of just get
Mhm.
all this out of my head, and would love for you to structure this, organize, and
Yes.
hear your wisdom.
Yeah. I mean, isn't that the truth? I feel like you naming all of these different aspects of money for me really says that it's really sticky for us, right? And
Mm.
the fact that we're spending so much time focusing on it also, I think, tells us there's something there, right? Because we sort of ignore things
Yeah.
that don't have a lot of importance or meaning. I think that there is a really powerful invitation at this time, like you mentioned, this place where we can all feel these big shifts, right? These almost subterranean tectonic shifts in the collective in so many ways, including about money. And for me, I think that the place that we need to start is just a sense of seeing clearly what has been and what is. Like, can we locate ourselves, particularly as people who think of themselves as women, right? Can we locate ourselves here in terms of how we relate to money? Like, what is actually going on?
Mm.
And I think that, you know, in this moment and in Western culture, which is my exposure, that's where I've grown up. And I think that one of the things that I really see is this really subtle dynamic that I think of as the money soul split. And I think it affects women in a very particular way. So, how I think of it is we get these cultural messages, right, our whole lives in various ways. But the ultimate conclusion is, I think, for most of us, you can have money or you can be good, right? And I use
Mm.
soul for the proxy for good. And especially as women, we are conditioned and enculturated directly and indirectly to be above all. And I'm using the word girl here intentionally, but to be a good girl, right? Like we live in a compliance culture. And if you look at the iconography and images of women in Western culture. It's, for example, like the Virgin Mary, right? She is selfless, right? What are the words we use to describe ideal women? Sweet, selfless. She literally has no self. She keeps nothing for herself. Giving, right? Nice, kind, compassionate, loving. And I feel like, do you ever hear in the good girl archetype, you don't hear powerful, nourished, in her pleasure, rested, right? Abundant, right? The idea of selflessness is that something has been depleted, something is gone. There's an emptying of something. And for me, I think that that's a really hard setup for women to be in this place of selflessness and good girl. And then on the other side, we have money, right? We're told money is the root of all evil. We're told money is dirty. And certainly women, the good girl archetype does not want women to be dirty, right? There's also a connotation there with sexuality. And so, like, to be good is to be not sexual. That's shameful. And then on the other side of the ledger, you have evil money. People who have money are powerful. People who have money or have access to their desires, right? Which is not typically in the good girl archetype. People who have money have more access to their pleasure, and that is usually shameful. And so I think that the real rub here is that this has been what's passed down to us to be good. And it being good has been directly related to our survival because women did not have access to money, have not had access to money until recent times, and still don't even have equal access to money. If you look at the wage gap, the investment gap, the home ownership gap, the overall wealth gap, we are still possessing, stewarding money at rates that are shockingly lower than men, right? And again, this is not like women versus men. This is where we are. And yet then to be good, we needed to be good so we could have access to money. And that historically has been in, the last few thousand years through men, right? And so it's just really sticky. Like if you go into that other side of really wanting money, being with it, loving it, you risk not belonging. You risk, abandonment by, the collective and others. And so it's a really unfair setup. And it leaves most of us in a place where we either feel shameful for wanting it, shameful for having it, or we totally are avoidant of it because it's dangerous to have it, right? All of these things that I just listed are not desirable traits in women archetypally in our culture.
Yeah, that's actually such a good point because I have felt a lot like this. Because growing up, I always loved money. And then I had a couple of experiences where I literally got the message, I'm not going to be liked or loved as much as if I would just like, oh, money doesn't matter and things like that, right? So in a way, I suppressed that part of me.
Yeah.
And now I'm still working, and I think it's a work in progress, probably all of our lives, but also in a way, because we also see a lot the other extreme, right? Where we're several women, they're really owning it to an extreme, also in some way, right? And I think we have to embrace both extreme in some way to find a healthy equilibrium, if you want to call it this way, right? And I have found myself, for example, that I feel like, again, I need to be the good girl to make up for this whole boss babe movement. And when we mainly talk about 6 and 7 figures and it's about nothing else, right? So, and that's not serving anyone either, right? I think every woman, the more financially well we are, the more we can give our gifts to the world. We can, live out our most abundant and fullest expression, right?
Right. And everyone wins when more women have more money. And yet it's hard for me to imagine that happening until we change the way that we relate to and see money. right? I mean, you don't want to walk towards things that have a negative association, like you're saying, right? And so I think that the work is, yes, of course, building skills, because money is both so profane and mundane and also is so magical and spiritual. So we need both, right? Just like we need to have those aspects of money, we need money and we need soul at the same time rather than dividing them out. But I think, like you're saying, like, for example, the boss babe concept, it's so focused on outcome, it's so focused on the number that it's almost just a reimagining of the same thing that we've been seeing for many years, which is bottom line extractive thinking without talking about the process to getting there or the way that we relate to the entire concept. And so I think that we are in a place where we can begin to actually see, okay, here's how things are. And can we imagine a different way? Like, money's not going anywhere, right? We can't just hide from it. But can we change the consciousness around money? And I think that women are particularly well situated to do that just based on our essential nature and capacity.
Yeah. So how would you help anyone that's listening? What's a good first step, right? To just, because I think it's about how do we feel about money, right? And the word that came for me too when you were talking is safe. Because whenever something doesn't feel safe, whatever story I have created, I tend to reject it, obviously, right? Because we want to survive. And when something doesn't feel safe, and I may not even consciously understand, why doesn't it feel safe for me? I mean, yeah, I may have these couple of stories where I'm not as loved in my family, or I don't want other people to be jealous of me, or money is the root of all evil. But maybe there's even way more stories there that I don't even know that create me not to feel safe around money.
Yeah, I mean, and that is the power. And I know this is talked about a lot right now in the larger conversation, but that is the power of the subconscious belief system, right? Is that, we pick up all of these cues for our whole life, especially from that 0 to 7 age, where we're just like a blank slate. And we're not conscious of what has been laid down on that blank page. And yet it is running our interactions with money. But as you're also saying, all of that is really engraved on the nervous system, right? Our nervous system is the record keeper, is the archivalist of our engagements with everything, but in this context, money. And so you're so right. I mean, the body for me is the way back. The body holds this entire story that we've all been collecting in this life, and the nervous system in particular, right? I mean, you can be, activated in your sympathetic nervous system and fight or flight with it. In your parasympathetic nervous system, you can be activated in a state of freeze. And so often for any of us, I think, when we have any of those responses, then we can feel shame, right? Because there's I don't even want to look at my accounts, right? I don't want to look at my accounts. I don't want to do anything, even things that would actually help me. Like, I don't want to put my investing on in an automated way. I don't want to automate my bill payments. Like, I don't want to do anything, like freeze or collapse, right? But then we also have these other ones that can be like very high anxiety. I'm checking my accounts 5 times a day because I don't trust that money will be there. And so I think there's so much information. I think that the body, which is acting in concert with the nervous system, is there to tell us. And I think the first step to your question is creating safety with money in the body and the nervous system, right? Like, can you look at your accounts? What is your capacity to both generate money, but then to keep it? Those are totally different capacities. And then to grow it, like to expand it. And I think you're totally right that the nervous system and the body is the place to start.
Yeah, and I think we actually had a conversation a while ago, just came to my mind. So we are always talking about, okay, change your beliefs, right? And in a way, we're rejecting a part of us. I think often that actually happens with the work we do. And I think I remember you saying it, and I also was reading a book recently where it was talked about to actually celebrate the parts of us that, yeah, that live in scarcity.
Mhm.
To celebrate, actually find pleasure in the part of us that doesn't feel safe around money. I found
Yeah.
that very interesting.
Yes, because I mean, every single part, like including the part inside of us that doesn't feel safe or is afraid of money or avoids it or hoards it, like there is a story there about you that wants to be heard. And my perspective is I find it very sad to sort of silence that part or push it aside because there is gold there, right? There is gold in your experience in this life. Maybe it's your experience in your lineage. Maybe it's representative of like of the collective also. And for me, that's where I get so curious. I'm like, I want to get to know that part of you. I want to get to know that belief. And I have found in my own one on one work with clients that when we go there with that part and we really get to know it and we embrace it and we allow it, that's when the magic happens. We're like, and when you get to the point where you can say, oh, yeah, there's a part of me that's like scared so much to engage with money. And you can just say that and welcome it. There's something really alchemical that tends to happen.
Mm. That's so powerful because I remember myself, I have been in so many coaching programs over these years, right? I think we all have probably. And I always felt this shame for, especially when it was about, hey, we have these big money goals, and there was some kind of resistance in my body, obviously, right? When I was in that space. And I didn't have that safe space that you were just describing, where we just with all the compassion. And I think that's also where human design and Jinkies now comes in, right? Because it's all about, hey, let's look at the shadows. Let's really embrace those shadows. And I, as you know, I have created my own space by now with my membership, the Conscious Money Creators Collective, used to be Collective, now Creators, because I was personally missing that, right? I was missing, okay, can we just openly, honestly, rawly talk about money? Because yeah, there's a lot of shame, even as I'm real, and I have to be honest, like when I'm around people where I feel like, oh, I should be in a different position with money, or whatever story I'm creating, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to find. It's really, really hard to find a really, really safe space for that.
Absolutely. And I mean, I certainly have heard of stories of women in group settings and it actually being really unsafe and just reinforcing harmful beliefs about money and things like this. So I think that the group setting to have one that is actually safe is so essential. And when you find that, I think that the potential for healing by being in the presence of others, honesty and truths around money is so powerful as well. And the other thing I think of though is, and I think there's a part of us that is hoping that we get to this endpoint. And at that point, we think, okay, I'm good on the money front, right? I have totally dealt with this issue and I'm never going to have a thing with it again. And for me, I think of it more as a practice because we live in a culture that every day is feeding us these same messages over and over and over. And so it's a practice of coming back and anchoring ourselves in our body, and for what is true for us versus what we're being shown and told so many different ways.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And I also, in the Gene Keys, I have learned that money is our biggest spiritual teacher, so because then I have seen this in my whole journey as an entrepreneur, you know, I have grown so much that I think I could never have, like, because like in corporate, for example, you work in corporate, you have the safety of the regular paycheck, so to say, depending like what industry you're in.
Yeah.
And I think that's quite a comfy space to be in, right? And
Yeah.
when I mean, my journey brought me into the corporate world that was kind of my inner calling. And I know that's not for everyone, but I think many people that are listening are probably on a very similar journey. And as you know, being an entrepreneur, it's not like you make the exact same amount of money every month, right? So there's sometimes a lot, then there's almost nothing, and you freak out, and then there's more coming. And then also magically, always there's enough, which is also so beautiful. And in the beginning, I have to say it freaked me out a little bit because it was scary. But then I started to appreciate it because, oh my God, it brought up so many deep things that, I mean, through the triggers that I experienced with money, some really deep stuff came up. And also I learned so many times that even though, especially those moments when there's nothing, I'm okay.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because it really brought me in touch with those, like, what am I really afraid of?
Yeah. And I think what I hear you talking about is, and you're right, especially in entrepreneurship, it's the same in trading, but what is underneath that is trust, right? Trust and faith used in a secular way. But those aren't so much places that you go when you're salaried, right? You just know that it will come. There's a sameness to it. And there's, of course, a comfort and sameness and predictability. And like you're saying, your own entrepreneurial journey. And I have had the same experience. Money is a portal. Money is a portal into the deeper work, into the deeper self, right? And it will show you, just hold up a mirror and show you so many things and invite you into the shadows, into other parts of yourself. And it's also, I think, entrepreneurship, as you're talking about, it also reminds us of the cyclicality of nature herself, right? Yeah. And I think part of the patriarchy is this great pressure towards sameness. And, that can come out in perfectionism. It can come out in the workday, in the expectation for the same output every single day versus what you were describing, and you said, and yet there has always been enough, even though some months there were none and some months there was so much. And it's, to me, I think, right, because we live that every year with the seasons, don't we?
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
There's this ramp up, and there's one season a year where it's just like massive abundance. And then nature's like, I'm done. I need to rest. I'll be back next year. And so we all know that, but the express culture that we live in has actually disowned that and suppressed it and tried to tell us that it's not cyclical at all. It should be the same every day, right? We should be the same person. We should produce in the same way. We should have the same salary, right? We should eat the same 3 meals every day. So almost, I also hear there's like been this return for you to another way of being in the world, perhaps a more ancient one.
Yeah, because I mean, obviously, like we had this conversation, we have to pay our bills and things like that, right? That is part of it. But I think we have gotten to this, like, it always has to be the same, and then only more is better, right? And if through actually learning that, sometimes it's high, sometimes it's low, I think we become less dependent on what's going outside of us. And this is, again, it brings me always back to some gene keys. And when I say that 21st, it's about control. We're trying to control, right? So everything on outside of us is like we need it to be so that we feel okay or that we feel safe. And in a way, I have been learning through, the ups and downs with all of this that, well, no matter what it is, I'm okay. Because I, just as a reference point, like 3 years ago, for example, if something would be very low with money, I would freak out. I would get into a little bit of a freeze state, right? And I wasn't functioning properly. I got a kind of a spiral down.
Yeah.
And now I'm noticing, like, well, my mind is still like, well, I shouldn't be okay, or I should freak out and all these kind of things. But I'm really starting to notice, like, I feel fine. There is a sense of trust, actually. But my mind is still working really hard to try to talk me out of it.
Yeah. I mean, isn't that like, thank you, mind, for like trying to keep me safe all the time. And also I'm good, and it's like what it sounds like you're saying is that you have developed an inner wealth and an inner,
Mm,
right? Which is very different than coupling our wealth, our worthiness and all of that to external wealth. And so
yeah.
it sounds like that's what you've been cultivating, and that you're having this really different experience of like, wow, I feel like I should be freaking out here. And yet something else is really now existing inside of me that knows that no matter what, there is enough. And maybe also I am enough, right? I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, because I'm not enough because of how much money I make. Yeah,
yeah.
that's so true.
And, you know, when I think of this American culture, or maybe, it extends beyond that, of more, 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 you know, greed and poverty are almost two sides of the same coin. Both are about scarcity, right? This
Mm,
to
yeah,
hoard and that there's never, never, never enough is based in scarcity,
so
right?
true.
Because if you trust that like more is coming, even if it's not here now. I mean, I think we could all feel this in ourselves that if we have that trust, there's not this like graspy aspect, And so it's what it sounds like. You just have this inner abundance and wealth and enoughness that doesn't make you so compulsive, perhaps
Um,
externally.
yeah, it feels nice, I have to say. And I so agree, right? If there would be a scarcity coin, there would be the greed and the, yeah, poor on each side, right? Because if we only feel safe because of the money we have, we're actually inside, there is a lot of scarcity, right? Because we think that it's the money that makes us safe or the money that makes us happy and all these kind of things. And I literally feel like in a way, until I get it, money keeps teaching me that. And
Yes.
we are all on unique journeys. I think for some it's more, for some it's less, there's no right or wrong. But until we get it, money's like, okay, now I can just leave you alone and not bother you so much anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, I really agree. And the conversation around enoughness and scarcity, I think it's really interesting if you actually track back historically. The research, at least right now, is indicating that there's pretty good evidence of cultures that were far more collaborative, far more egalitarian, would naturally distribute resources rather than hoard, and that it looks like at least this point, somewhere in the range of 6 to 8,000 years ago, there were changes ecologically that shifted things, at least in, for example, Eastern Europe and Western Asia, where there had previously been an abundance of food. So it'd be very easy to just,
Mhm.
share and distribute it equally. And all of a sudden, there was a bit more of, it became more of a hotter, drier landscape. And so food became more scarce. And all of a sudden, people had to go far outside of the clan to try to look for food. And there was a limited amount of it. So, right there, we had, the entry of competition, of, hoarding resources, right? And hierarchy also.
Mm,
And
yeah.
so, if you really track back, scarcity is at the root of all of this. And what do we do when things are scared or scarce? We're afraid. And what do we do when we're afraid? We try to control.
Yeah.
And that has been, if that food was the initial resource we were talking about, well, money is just a proxy for resources in some ways. And so we can sort of track that thread of scarcity, fear, control, and, sort of power can be another way to control, right? If it's not coming from an embodied, integrated place. And that's sort of what we've inherited, right?
Yeah.
We are all working with this scarcity based, power hungry, hoarding, competitive, hierarchical tradition of money at this point.
Mm.
And like you're saying, I mean, it's beautiful what you're saying, how on your own journey you have really unwound that in a very profound way.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's good to talk about it because, sometimes I still like, I should be, at a different point at this, where I'm at in my business right now. And even though I have been, I think, even financially doing really well, but I sometimes been like, well, I should have broken the 7 figures or something like that, right? And I'm like, well, you know what? I probably had to go through certain lessons, and that's my unique path. And sometimes we see it in hindsight. And even what you're just saying is like, wow, that I didn't see that myself. This inner wealth that is there. And I think we still live in a culture where it's like we put it on something outside of us, right?
Yeah.
All the time. And obviously human design Gene Keys is all about bringing us back to like, okay, it's really within us something. And yeah, money is here to teach us so many beautiful things. So yeah, in
Mhm.
that sense, it's pretty exciting.
Yeah. And I think, to what you're saying about inner wealth, I think that's really, if we are going to change the consciousness around money, which we must, it feels like an imperative for me. I think it has to start internally, right? As the saying, as above, so below. If we can cultivate the inner wealth, the inner abundance, the inner sense of enoughness, we will start to see it and create it outside of ourselves. We already know that we create a world or a reality in front of us based on what we experience inside and believe to be true. And so I think, what are the ways that we can access the deep intelligence, the ancient intelligence, which is already inside of us, to remind ourselves of the internal abundance that has always been there and is still there, and then bring
Mm,
that to the outside world. And I think that that's why, in particular, if we bring the focus back to the idea of the mother, not like your mother, but this idea of this being that can, from literally 2 cells, take 2 cells, a little bit of effort,
mm,
literally wait, do a little tending, but wait, in our case as humans, 280 days, and then birth a 25 to 35 trillion cell human, to have in that time drawn down a soul from I don't know where, the ether. Like, that archetype, that energetic archetype, is so much more life-giving. It is very, very accurate. I mean, it's happening all around us all of the time. And if we can sort of anchor our worldview, or at least our view of money, in like, wow, this cycle is happening all around us. All of us with uteruses have the capacity to do that. And if that were the way that we engage with money, from like this point of like, what can we create, cultivate, birth, and then nourish, or distribute? Like, women are also natural, that we naturally distribute our resources to others.
yeah, yeah.
Like, can we start to move in that direction, and change how we relate to money, and see it as this really powerful possibility for shifting a way of being in the world.
Yeah, this is great because as you were talking, I had this also realization for myself that part of me, I'm very aware of it, is sometimes like I don't want to become greedy
Mm-hmm.
because I mean, we see this in the world, right? And I mean, this is every company, it's always like more, 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 more. That's the only like reference point for success, right? If the company didn't make a higher profit than last year, something is wrong, right? If we're staying, or if it's going down really bad, right? So we're not allowing the natural cycles of nature in the old culture with money, right? And I think also, I've talked about it many times actually, now that I'm thinking about it, is there's a part of me that's like, okay, maybe I also really have to ground myself in this like more collective sharing consciousness, so that when the overabundance kicks in,
Yes.
I am equipped with such a robust nervous system that I don't need to hoard the money, that I don't need to just have more, 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 more. And even sometimes when I have seen also, and this is not to judge, just perceiving like other coaches talk about, oh, I made 6 figures and now I made 7 figures and now I made or 1 million and then now 3 million. It's always like up, up. I felt the pressure. I myself, I was like, I don't think I want it, because if I make 1 million and then I have to have the pressure to make 3 million, like I cannot even breathe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I really feel like it's more like, yes, of course, we have to have some ground stability, all of us, to take care of our normal needs that we have as humans, to have shelter, to eat, to have certain experiences, to connect with other humans, right? And depending on, I think, where we live in the world and how connected we are to an environment, there's sometimes very little money needed. Sometimes it's a little bit more, right? Depending what cities we live in and stuff like that. So, and how dependent we are on resources as well, I think, right? I think the more we are, we actually need more money.
Yeah.
So, and I think also sometimes the people that have very little money, they're even richer because they know how to work with the resources. They're more connected with nature, right? I mean, there's so many like, I don't know, we could go in so many different directions, but I think where I wanted to get to is that our role, more with the feminine way of approaching money and business, is really to get away from the hoarding, from the greed and just more is more, but actually bring the natural cycles of nature, even at higher levels, even when you make a lot of money, that it's okay to go down. Let's celebrate it. Let's breathe. Let's recalibrate. Let's get in touch with our business. Is there still an integrity? Is there something new that wants to be birthed? And sometimes it's time to reallocate some resources, you know, which I think that is very uncommon still these days.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much scarcity embedded truly in the DNA and the nervous system. We even know from epigenetics that there's a whole emerging field of study in economics that's the study of scarcity. Right. So that's being studied in behavioral sciences. Also, though, in epigenetics, we see the effects of famine and other things, even lasting, 2 or 3 generations. And these are having genetic effects. Right. And so there is so much scarcity here. And yet we have, if you go back far enough, all of us in the collective, in our DNA, in our lineage, if we go back far enough, there is actually an imprint for this other way of being, which is what you're talking about. And it makes me think about, what is the difference between abundance and greed, right? In both cases, you could have a lot, but I would argue it's related to, how are you with those resources? Are you holding on to them? Are you hoarding them? Or are you distributing them, right? And that's sort of the way, if you even think about, sure, the universe is expanding over time. Even stock market keeps expanding. And so this abundance approach, more for me, I think of it like the spiral or the golden ratio, or, that is from the Fibonacci sequence, how sure, it's each ring of the spiral is expanding out and out, but it's also going down under again. Like it's redistributing, it's giving back so that we can regenerate again. And that's such a big difference. When we're talking about abundance, it's sustainable, it's regenerative, it's life-giving. Greed and the culture of more, more, more is extractive. It's actually ending life as part of the process. And so what if we could get to the same place of a lot of great amounts of things, but through totally different means, where we were actually creating more wealth in all ways. Okay?
Yeah.
More time, more rest, like regenerating the original mother, right? The earth, like, and actually giving to the collective and ourselves at the same time. Like, what if?
I mean, I really feel like we're just at the very near beginning of this whole new, I mean, just really can feel it, because when we see this in the world, and it's so exciting to be part of this, right? Because so many businesses that are in the world, like we said, it's a lot about greed, and it's to the detriment of nature, right? I mean, we see this still left and right. it's bringing things to an end. At some point, there's no more oil, and at some point, there are no more resources, right? Even the whole agriculture system cannot continue like that, right? I mean, we all know it. So it's so exciting. And I think we have to collectively let go of the greeds for it to come into a place where we, instead of me making another $1 million, and I already have, and I have enough, and to actually use that to put it into areas where there is still lack of financial resources, where it can regenerate the soil, or it can support people that need it, whatever. I mean, I don't even know all the things that it could possibly channeled into. And the Gene Key 45 is part of, we call this the codon ring of prosperity. That, along with the Gene Key 16, is called the codon ring of prosperity. So, and the 45 is all about the equitable distribution of resources.
Wow.
And we also call it the queen. I mean, it's also called the king in human design, right? But it's really this energy. And the other in the human design channel, that's the 21 that connects to the 45, that is control.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, the shadows, we're trying to control everything, right?
Yes.
But the healthy way of control is it's called authority in the Gene Keys, where we are, well, I'm in control of how I show up in the world. I'm in control of how I approach money, right? But not controlling in the way of like holding on and
fear. Yeah.
Yeah, fear, exactly. So there's a healthy way of control, right?
Yeah.
With
It
that.
almost sounds like what you're saying for the 45 one of control. It's like choice. Like I'm choosing to do this. Like I'm in my authority.
Yes.
There's an element in that sort of shadowy aspect of control that's sort of compulsive. It's like I have to like do all these things to try to control things so that I can exist in this space. And yeah, I mean, I think so much of what we're saying also is, could money be sacred again? Right? Like, what if money were sacred? What if there were that energy imbued in it and it actually was sacred? I mean, if you look at the true origins of money, of gold coinage, it was thought to provide magical powers, magical healing powers. And it was actually stamped with the goddesses. And it was thought that if you had one, if you had gone to a special ceremony or a ritual, you would be given this gold coin, which was said to carry the energy of that ceremony. Money actually had spiritual origins, at least in the West. It was like that. And then something happened, and we have been in a time of scarcity. And what if we could revive and remember this element of the sacred in money? What if, as women, as all of us, but as women, what if we moved towards money, right? With this energy of the generative, sacred, truly abundant, truly wealthy perspective.
Yeah, and how we can more co-create and all of it.
Yeah.
It will definitely require all of us to release more and more of the ego, right? That it's an ongoing process, and I think it's a very specific, unique journey for all of us. But that's why I love we're just starting to create awareness about it. And even when we got on the recording here today, we didn't know how the conversation is going to evolve. So I feel like I already learned so much, and my whole perspective opened up so much because, just of this like really raw and honest exchange about how you and I, we feel about money and all of that.
Yeah. I mean, I love money. It's such a portal and it has so much promise, I think, even for humanity in this very messy here and now. But I feel so strongly that not only do we have to change the consciousness around it, but this is not alone work. This is work that needs to be done in safe, supportive group spaces, right? This is how I really see it happening. So I hope that we will, so many of us, those who feel called, will be open to moving into those spaces. There are so many of them, right? And so that we can be led back to this place that is, for me at least, is more true and accurate. right, than the
Yeah.
current version.
I would love to hear you talk a little bit about the humans who trade, because I feel like that is one of those places. I can
Yeah.
tell you that I have been part of it now for over a year. And whenever, because you still offer calls, which I think is amazing. And there is a very accepting, loving energy around money. And also, I mean, in the course, you actually teach a lot about the energy with money and with the nervous system. So I would just love for you to share a little bit about it so people know what it's all about.
Yeah. So it really came out of my own journey into trading, but trading really is about, it's about being inside of the money, right? There are all these other ways that we can make money at arm's length. But what I learned about trading was that it's really like as if you're in a wave in the ocean and you dive under the wave and you're just inside it, right? You're feeling the actual flow of money and seeing the patterns and experiencing the energetics of it. And I saw that when I started trading, all of these universal patterns, like, for example, like there's no such thing as linear growth that doesn't stop. This more, always increasing. I'm increasing, my revenue every year by this percentage. Well, even if you look at stocks that are on a major uptrend, even as they're trending up, they have these post-expansion contractions that are totally normal, right? So we still see that organic spiraling growth. So I saw all of this, these deeper patterns in it. And so that's what I created the course for, and from that place. And so it's really from this more feminine principle. It's 5 minutes a day for 8 weeks. It's all about allowing where you are. So you don't have to force yourself to show up and do the videos every day. And it's also about this collective spirit. We come together for Humans Who Trade, which is my introduction to trading in the stock market. And every week we have 2 live calls, almost every week of the year. Almost all of those calls are with me, and we come together, and it's just very much meeting people where they are, right? And so much of the work is about nervous system safety with money, with making money with ease, which is kind of a shocker to people to find out that, oh, my nervous system doesn't feel safe making money with ease. I have so married the concept of making money with a lot of effort that when it comes with ease, I might go into freeze, or I might go into flight. And so really, sure, we're democratizing trading, but what we're really doing is collectively becoming comfortable with making money with ease, with holding money, with holding larger amounts of money, and just doing it together. So
And what I love so much, and I think I shared this before when we talked about it, why I also decided to be part of it, is that you don't only make trading decisions from the mind. Of course, there's also logic involved in your process, but your biggest emphasis is always get in the body. I mean, basically your intuition, right?
yeah.
And I love that so much because it just feels so much more grounded. And my favorite part of any call is the first 5 minutes. Because Erin, like, and it's your energy, seriously, your calming voice, where we do like a body scan, and we just, oh my gosh, it's the best. Seriously, it's the best of everything.
Oh, I love hearing that. Yeah, it's so wild because the core of my method is somatics. And I had come to that conclusion on my own through my own trading. I realized anyone can learn how to trade, right? Anyone can do that. What will determine the sustainability of their trading and the profitability will be their ability to be inside of their body and to sense the cues that come up, right? The yes or the no. And after I had come to that conclusion, then I discovered that there's this whole body of academic research regarding trading in specific. And what that research says is that the most profitable traders on the New York and London stock exchange floors are those who sense the sensations in their body the fastest and act on them the fastest. And so it so beautifully comes together with so much of this other work that's happening in the larger context these days around the nervous system, around somatics, is that, and that being a way to come back into yourself. But it is as applicable here in trading too, right? In trading, which is another way of talking about making money. It's like, it's somatic, it's the body. And it's the body is the place that we have been asked to leave for so long, right? There's been so much shame around the body, especially the woman's body. Is the body ours? Is it here for other people? And it's so powerful to me to have concluded myself. And then the research supports that, like, no, the body is the answer, right? The body will tell you the direction. The body is the ultimate in integrity. And so, yeah, there's a big emphasis on that as well. And I'm actually opening up a wait list for a non-trading, just a very intimate group to use the body to discover our deeper intelligence and our own individual and collective stories about money. And so that will be something that I'll be doing soon. I'm really excited about that as well.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna give me the link. I'll make sure I'm gonna put it in the show notes so people can sign up for that and join you on it. I love it. And I hear that intuition is a thing also in trading.
Yeah. I mean, it's a thing everywhere, I think. It's been a long time that we've been told to ignore our intuition and always choose our conscious logical brain, which again, we have for a reason. But I think that we have pendulated so far, right, to the extent that we value logic and reason above all. And we forget that there are other intelligences. In this conversation, we're talking so much about the intelligence of the body, right? It's so powerful. I mean, it's the direct line from the subconscious, which is processing so much faster than the conscious logical brain.
Yeah, I can totally attest. I mean, I always make a joke, which is not a joke, that my secret business strategy is following my intuition, which really it is. You know, if I were just to go with the logic, I wouldn't be anywhere. So I wouldn't have this podcast. So
Yeah.
seriously, and it's like you say, like with the trading, you know, like, yeah, you can make all the calculations and everything, but if your body is a full no, it's not the day to trade. And that's okay. And for us to trust it. And then other times you have the urge, you have the feeling, you just know and you do it, then it seems to work very beautifully.
Yeah. I mean, the number of times that I've heard from students that, you know, we always do a somatic practice right before we take a trade, even after we've done our full analysis. And when people act on the no, you know, the number of times that they write to me and they're like, and I couldn't believe it. Like, even though everything I thought looked good, it actually went against me. I'm so glad I didn't take that trade. Or I also have people who write to me and say, I was getting such a strong yes, even though it maybe didn't seem like the very strongest trade logically, but I was getting such a strong yes in my body. And I took it, I took that trade, and I got this really unexpected result, you know, in a good way. And so I think that's the part of our brains. It's efforting so hard to understand everything, right? And we just want to understand and know. And, you know, like I'm saying, what if there are other ways of knowing, right? What if you can know through your body, not just through your mind?
Yeah, many people probably don't want to hear that because we want to have the logic, we want to have the certainty, but I think, yeah, life has been training us with the trading, me and my business, that there is something great. And I personally, I cannot deny it. I mean, it's too good to be, it's too good. Like, you have to try it out seriously and build the muscle. And I really feel that's what you're doing also with your course, right? Humans Who Trade. You help people build the muscle of trusting their body's wisdom. Yeah, we're still doing the logic. We're still like, you know, to bring us in a safe space. And I've done my homework, so to say. And I understand what I'm doing here. I'm not just blindly, you know, because you still need to know how to put in an order, right? And like, I'm just intuitively guessing, and you know, that's not gonna work.
We're not negligent.
Exactly. So it's this perfect balance of the masculine and the feminine. And I think trading for years has been mostly masculine, you know, but if we just do it this way, it leads to burnout, and we can bring in the feminine, it actually brings the ease. And I think that's what connected you and I first, is the ease, right? Because I think you found my website I think I talk on there, you want to have more effortlessness and ease or something like that. And it definitely exists. Yeah.
Yeah. And to your point of bringing this masculine and feminine energy, I mean, women are the original investors. You literally start with 2 seeds, you wait 9 months, and you get
Yeah.
35 trillion seeds. I mean, like that is investing.
That is a really good investment. Yes.
And
So
yet
true.
we have this sense, like through culture, that we're not good at investing, or investing is so hard. And,
Mhm.
that's part of my work, is like, no, this is accessible to anyone who wants to learn it. And the path is through the body. And I so agree with you. Oh my goodness. I was that person whenever I remember I had a class in law school, and it was an adjunct professor who was, sort of had this like hippie vibe. And she would always make us do this mindfulness practice at the beginning of class. And it was so frustrating to me, because I was like, can we just get to the information? Like, can you just give me the knowledge? And
Mhm.
I resisted going into my body. I mean, I lived most of my life completely dissociated, just like driving myself so hard, driving my body so hard, driving my mind so hard, completely exhausted and depleted, and had all of these health issues.
Mhm.
And so I was one who returned begrudgingly to the body. And like you said, for one who has lived primarily in the logical world, it feels too good to be true when you surrender some to ease, and even consider that could it be less effortful? Like, could it be effortless?
Yeah.
And you begin to act on the intuition or the body, and then you see what happens. Like for me, it has been beyond what I could have imagined in my conscious mind. I could
Yeah.
not imagine the path. I could not have imagined how good and rich it could be. And I'm using that in a figurative way also.
Mhm. Mhm.
I couldn't have contemplated it. And
Mhm.
so at some point, there is some moment when you have to leap. I mean, you don't have to, we all get to choose. But when you choose to leap, even if you don't fully understand it, even if you don't fully know what the other side's going to look like.
Mhm. Yeah. And I mean, that's how you got into trading, no? Not because you were like, let me figure out a way how to make money. Like, no, you packed up your bags,
Yeah,
sold everything, went to travel, not knowing where life is gonna take you. And here you go, trading found you. Yeah.
totally. I still don't even know how I found trading. It was on my radar 0%.
Mhm.
Like zero, it just dropped into my lap, and I felt a flicker, and I thought, oh, okay. I feel the somatic flicker. I always say follow the flicker.
I love it. The somatic flicker. I love it.
Yeah. And so here we are today.
Mm, I love that. Thank you so much, Erin. I want to just ask you one more question. I think I
Mm.
asked you that last time as well. Like one nugget of wisdom you want to leave the listeners with. And I know we already had so many. It can also be something you already said that feels super important.
I want to say you don't know what's in store for you yet.
Mm,
Your story is not yet written. And I think that we can get so caught up in the minutia of the day to day. And I get it. Like it happens for all of us. And we can think that where we are today is all that's possible for us. And, if there's any part of you that feels the urge to leap, I say leap. You have no idea how good it can get.
mm,
And all of that said, it's going to be real too. It's going to be great, and it's going to be real. And I think as it should be.
I love that. It's better than any goal we can set with the mind, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It helped me so much. Like, so I always resisted this goal setting. You need to know what you want. And I get it. We still need to know what we want. But if we get caught up in too many details and then control, right, and need to have it a certain way, we're not open to the magic. So I love that. And thank you for modeling it, for living it. I truly appreciate you.
Thank you. It's wild. As you said that, I just realized, oh, right. I had gone and I was traveling all around, and then I came back to the States, and here we go again. I'm moving abroad again this fall, so I'll report back.
Yeah, following your somatic flicker, exactly.
So thank you for having me. It's always so nourishing to connect, and I love the work that you're doing on your podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. And thank you, listeners, as always, for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. And I'm very excited to be with you all on the next one.